women are using DHEA because they want to boost testosterone levels.
Yeah.
There's some pretty high doses out there.
I've seen some wild things
of topical DHEA. So let's talk about that, because testosterone for women is blowing up on TikTok, and it's certainly blowing up as it's this miracle. If you're in perimenopause and menopause, you've got low energy, you're, kind of achy, your libido's going, just take a bunch of testosterone, you'll feel amazing. What does that actually look like, and what role does DHEA have in actually kind of changing that, I think, a little bit for women?
Oh, that's a great question.
Welcome to Modern Menopause by Parlor Games. I'm your co-host Morven. I work here at Parlor Games, and I'm with my other co-host, Dr. Robyn. She is our consulting physician and all-round expert on everything from hormone to saliva testing and so much more. Today's big question is, what the hell is DHEA? So you might have heard of DHEA. It's kind of a newer thing in terms of hormone replacement therapy. I'm not even going to begin to try and pronounce the full word. I'm going to leave that for Dr. Robyn. But DHEA is definitely a newer supplement, and I'm going to use the term supplement. There's a couple different ways you can get it, but definitely topical DHEA has become a big thing, and so we're going to talk through it today because it comes with a lot of, big claims. So yeah, Dr. Robyn, walk us through DHEA.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, we very rarely use the full word, so I'm going to try it, but it's dehydroepiandrosterone, otherwise known as DHEA. So we're going to go with that all day because nobody needs to repeat that. And DHEA is a hormone that's made in the adrenal glands. So we oftentimes talk about cortisol on here. Cortisol is also made in the adrenal glands, but they're made in different compartments. DHEA does respond to stress. So when we're stressed and the brain says, hey, make stress hormones, DHEA can be one of them. But it's more of what we call a prohormone. So it's actually the building block to other hormones like testosterone and estrogens. Postmenopausally, that's where most of those our hormones come from. It's built from our building block. But DHEA should decline as we age. As we're aging, it declines. And so here this building block kind of, the time we need it most is, in theory, getting lower.
Okay. Well, yeah, because one of the other big terms for DHEA is the anti-aging hormone.
Sure.
Right? Like this is sort of the tagline that you'll hear a lot on DHEA. So why is that, right? So you're saying it's a prohormone, it's a building block for testosterone and estrogens. So for our listeners, walk us through what that looks like, because there's a lot of claims about DHEA. So
yeah. There are.
Yeah. You're taking DHEA, let's say, you go out and you're like, hey, I want some topical DHEA. Walk us through what that looks like for women using it. What happens when you put it on your skin? What's happening internally?
Yeah. So DHEA does have its own roles in the body, right? Like I mentioned, it helps with stress. It can help with our tissues, like our muscles, our bones. It can help with our memory, particularly our memory under stress. But DHEA is converted to other hormones in the peripheral tissue. So particularly like in our fat cells, it can become estrogen. And so it's, yes, the body premenopausally will make more estrogen from the ovaries and things, but postmenopausally we're packaging those hormones, we're making them from building blocks, and DHEA serves as that main building block there. So while it does have its own job, its own roles, it's helping to promote our other hormones. It's helping to help keep those at, from becoming essentially nothing or zero. It's interesting that the term anti-aging, I think, because it can help with those hormones that we typically decline with age, and because it itself is declining as we age, we can think of it as like an anti-aging hormone. That's what people call it, as we're increasing it. It probably, and I'd have to look this up, it's been a long time, but it probably has some impact on some cellular components from the aging capacity too. There are certain things that change in our cells as we age, and it very likely helps those, which is part of why it gets its name as well. Okay.
Well, and that's interesting, right? Because we've definitely started fielding a lot more questions about DHEA. Women are hearing about it, they're learning about it, it's coming up, right? It's coming to the front. And I think people are curious about this mechanism where they're using it, it has some functions in the body, but it's also converting. So walk us through that conversion process, especially for women who might be interested in using DHEA. What does that conversion process look like? Because I believe it's testosterone, estriol. I think that's the steps, right?
It's actually kind of twofold. DHEA has the option to go two different ways, and so we can more shunt towards the estrogens, or we can more shunt towards the androgens like testosterone. So in the hair follicles or in the skin, for instance, some women might complain they use DHEA and they got more acne or they got more facial hair growth. Well, DHEA becomes testosterone. Testosterone at the hair follicle becomes another hormone that's 7 times more potent, and so then we're going to see. You can see things like acne or facial hair growth, particularly if someone is using more DHEA than their body needs, or they're particularly sensitive to it. So not everybody's going to experience that, but some people will. Same thing, scalp hair loss. That can happen as well when it's at the scalp. Same concept, it's just now we're losing hair instead of growing it, which seems so unfair.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that, right? Because I know one route is the estrogens route, right? And the other route is the androgens route. And women don't really get to decide. So this is one of the challenges with using DHEA for some women, is it's not the same as using topical progesterone or topical estriol. Right. You don't get to put on your DHEA and say, hey, okay, here's what I want you to do. It's going to do what it wants to do. But obviously, one of the things that DHEA is known for is converting to testosterone. And for a lot of women, testosterone is prescription only. And so a lot of women are using DHEA because they want to boost testosterone levels. Yeah. There's some pretty high doses out there. I've seen
some wild things
of topical DHEA. So let's talk about that, because testosterone for women is blowing up on TikTok, and it's certainly blowing up as this miracle. If you're in perimenopause and menopause, you've got low energy, you're kind of achy, your libido's going. Just take a bunch of testosterone, you'll feel amazing. What does that actually look like, and what role does DHEA have in actually kind of changing that, I think, a little bit for women?
Oh, that's a great question. This gives women options that they might not have, right? Testosterone is, it's a federally regulated hormone that is not FDA approved for women. So providers, if they're open to it, not all providers are, but if they're open to it, they might be prescribing some men's testosterone to their female patients, just use a little bit here. And so it's kind of the wild, wild west of hormones right now. It's testosterone. And so some women, maybe they want to try it. They've seen that their levels are low, but they don't have a doctor who's willing to prescribe it, and so that there's going to be some access barriers there. When we think about DHEA, even though I can prescribe testosterone to my patients, and I very often like to start with DHEA for these women because DHEA is it's more gentle. It's not as strong. It's not as potent as testosterone. So if we start with a very physiologic, meaning what the body would normally produce, we start with maybe even a conservative dose of DHEA for somebody, and she all of a sudden gets, acne or scalp hair loss or, facial hair growth increase, well, then the likelihood that she's going to tolerate testosterone is not very, very high, especially at some of the doses I'm seeing used with women. So this can be kind of a stair step into supporting what we would call the androgens, or the male hormones there. It's an easy way to try that. And like you said, it's available in all sorts of dosing from, 2.5 milligrams. I've seen 150 milligrams. She had scalp hair loss. So I think, really common amount for women to use is something, or that we see is something closer to 5 milligrams, maybe 10 milligrams, something like that.
Well, and that's one of the things, right? DHEA, it has become much more common. So people are using these big doses, and they're often seeing these negative effects, which are, it sounds like essentially some of the negative effects of using too much testosterone. So that conversion process goes, and then women are saying, hey, testosterone's probably not going to be great for you. Let's talk about some of the positives of DHEA, because yes, there is this it's a small chance of, hey, you might have some of these negative side effects, right? But again, this is typically when women are using these very, very high dose creams where you're looking at sort of massively high milligrams.
And And it just popping in there, 50 to 100 milligrams is what's studied in the literature to support men's testosterone levels. And men make 10 times more testosterone than we do.
Right.
So just putting that in perspective, because there are books out there, there are recommendations that I'm seeing where women are starting at those doses. And that's where we definitely see some of those things for them.
Right. So yes, there's this, okay, if it's converting to testosterone and maybe women are suffering from some of these things, you know, maybe at a lower dose, but more likely at a higher dose. I've heard some experts say to wait until around 55 before using DHEA, but that confuses me because I'm already struggling in perimenopause. Why wait, and what happens if you start too soon?
Yeah. Oh, great question. When we're, 55, by 55, most women, not all, but quite a few women are already going to be postmenopausal. And so we're thinking that at that point, DHEA has already started its natural decline. This age of 55 is not a magic hard line. This is an age that's going to catch most women if they're going to try it at a time in life that might be more appropriate for them. Women, in theory, could try DHEA sooner if they need it, but most people aren't testing. And so if somebody's testing and they see their levels are low and they see, maybe testosterone and estradiol could stand to get a little support, and they're only 45, okay. But if we don't know those levels, 55 is a pretty typical age where women, the majority of women, may be starting to experience that decrease and could bring that on board. If somebody's using DHEA and it's too early, it hasn't started declining yet, they might push their, remember it's a prohormone, so that might support their hormones a little too much and increase levels where they didn't want to increase levels and create some symptom pictures there versus helping with whatever concerns they were hoping for.
It's interesting, right? And so for our listeners, if this sounds interesting to you, if this is something that you're unfamiliar with, be sure to share this podcast episode with other people. DHEA is less well known, and certainly for women who are in menopause, postmenopause, they often don't know that these options are available to them. So if this is something that you're unfamiliar with, and you think that other people in your life who are in that age demographic might be unfamiliar with, be sure to share this podcast episode with them. Because I think DHEA is one of those things, right? In fact, earlier today we were speaking about sort of confusion because one of our listeners had heard of DHEA referred to as the mother hormone, which isn't correct, right? That's an incorrect statement. So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to that, because I think that there is this confusion largely based on historical kind of information surrounding hormones, where it was women were just given estrogen, men were just given testosterone, everybody's fine, these are your hormones, this is the boy hormone, the girl hormone, we're done. But it's a little bit more than that, right?
Yeah, definitely. And as we are advancing in what we know and how we're approaching women's health and hormones, I think evaluating these levels for women is part of a more well-rounded and individualized approach. It's like you said, it's not just estrogen, here you go. We're going to have declining progesterone levels in perimenopause, super low progesterone levels in menopause. DHEA levels can fluctuate. By the way, we talk about DHEA decreasing with age, but DHEA can also be increased with insulin resistance. So things like prediabetes, diabetes, and stress. There more so increases towards those premenopausal years than postmenopausal, but we can have varying levels still. So other nuances to think about.
Right.
Well, and so one other thing that tends to happen is women will confuse DHEA and DHEAS. DHEAS is what we check for in blood work, and it's the storage form of DHEA. So it doesn't actually tell us what our active or DHEA levels are. That's what we test in saliva. So the storage form, just because the storage form might be robust, doesn't mean that our DHEA levels are robust. It means we're real good at storing it.
Right. Well, and I think you make a good case, for that sort of individualized care, looking at the more complete picture of women's hormones to help women get to a point where they want to feel good. And actually, this is a great time to move on to some questions, because I think that's where we really see that the argument for that in these questions, right? Of women trying to figure out, what do I need to feel good, to get the results that I want. So we have a question here from Lori. I'd like to know your opinion on taking palmetto supplements for hair shedding. I experience it from using the rebounds. I love the effects of using rebounds when I use the full amount, but my hair sheds more. I've tried cutting to half a pump every day. It helps the hair loss, but then my issues return. The alternative I've heard about is something called 7-keto DHEA, but I'm not sure if I would reap the same benefits from that.
This is a great question. It sounds like Lori's done some research. So saw palmetto is an herb with some good studies behind it, some decent studies, and it can help decrease the conversion of testosterone to DHT. So DHEA can impact testosterone levels. Testosterone then becomes another hormone at the hair follicle, that's our DHT, and can cause some of that hair shedding. So saw palmetto is a way to help slow that conversion. And so, that might be helpful for people. In fact, I have several clients who use it, and it's only, blocking at that conversion. So maybe she could still get some of her benefits that she experiences with it by combining the saw palmetto with that. 7-keto DHEA is a form of DHEA that's kind of talked about as not being a converter. But I will tell you, after seeing thousands, tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 saliva hormone panels, we do still see 7-keto being a pro-hormone and converting. So I typically skip that and just stick with the DHEA component.
Okay, here's a good one. Are there women who shouldn't take DHEA at all? For example, I've heard that women who have a history of cancer or certain hormone-sensitive issues are supposed to avoid it.
Well, so in a case like this, if a woman is actively avoiding estradiol, for example, or testosterone for some reason because she doesn't want it to become estradiol, then we wouldn't want her to use something that would serve as a pro-hormone or a building block for that hormone. So there may be some. So anybody who's trying to not increase estrogen would not be a great candidate to use DHEA because it could do that. Or somebody who's not trying to increase testosterone, DHEA could do that. If somebody's in that camp for whatever reason, they have a medical diagnosis, or they've been told that by their doctors, and they're actively following kind of that trajectory, then exactly, those women we would not want to use them.
Yeah, and that's something that we mentioned. We have a ton of amazing blogs on DHEA on our website. It's parlor-games.com. We do have a ton of blogs on it. We have a ton of blogs on rebounds. And we always recommend, especially women who have things like PCOS, endometriosis, these kinds of things, to be more cautious, which is interesting because that kind of segues into our last question. If DHEA is sold over the counter here, but more restricted in other places, should women be cautious about taking it on their own? How do you know if you're getting the dose or product right?
Also great question. And I think depending on where people are, whether we're talking DHEA, or a topical progesterone cream or something like that, depending on globally where they are, there are different restrictions. That's set by, the country that they're in some, like in Canada, for instance, different, as it states, territories in Canada, they have different rules there. And so, it doesn't necessarily speak to the concern about a product, but just more about that area's regulations. So, always when we're thinking about hormones, if possible, I would say, speak with your healthcare team about that. But that we can follow our hormone levels, regardless of the hormone that we're using, by using saliva testing to monitor that. It can also give us a baseline of our levels and help show ladies, what hormones they might be lacking in, or might be lower for them, or maybe even higher for them. And we can use it the same way once somebody's on using something to kind of look at those levels and see what their body levels look like using that hormone. And that, coupled with their symptoms, could help them and their provider make some adjustments.
Okay, awesome. That is about all we have time for today. Like I said, and I say this every episode, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any others. Be sure to share it with other women, women helping women. So share it with other women that you think might benefit from hearing this information. And if you yourself have questions that you'd like Dr. Robyn to address, be sure to comment below. That's all we have time for today, but we hope you listen next time.